So I hope you can hear me. I'm taking the last walk down this road on my third year respiratory placement. It's final day today, so I'm hoping to have my review this morning. We're just going to see, hopefully it's going to go okay. This one I'm probably the most unsure of out of all of them, so I'm quite apprehensive today. But regardless of whatever the marks are, it's been an amazing experience. I don't think I could have had a better respiratory placement with what I've experienced today. This is a really good kind of example of where marks just are not actually really what you should be aiming for on placement. So anyway, I'll be back when I've found out my marks. Finished. So today marks the last day of my placement. So it's Friday the 1st of November. Final week done. 5 weeks of my third year respiratory placement has been completed. So today's video really is just a summary kind of roundup. I'm going to keep it really short about how just how I feel having just finished my placement. So as with real life, today was thrown massively up in the air. So we planned to do my end review and marking at the beginning of the day, the morning, but we'd had some poorly patients that really needed urgent care, so that obviously takes priority. And as a student, that you're kind of thrown between two things there. You're worried, apprehensive about how you've done, but at the same time, you understand that there's pressures there with patients kind of massively taking priority. So yeah, it was an interesting roller coaster of the day. However, looking back at it, it was incredible. We had some really quite severely ill patients that we got requested to go and see urgently, and I was able to get sort of hands-on with patients that were desaturating, who ventilated, and it was a really good experience to basically be sort of saving someone's airway, so their ability to breathe, prioritizing that over fractured ribs, and giving vibs to a patient today that I could feel their ribs move under my hands, which was, I mean, it was kind of taking aside the patient there from, I'm being very selfish. It was an amazing opportunity, and it worked as well. And this patient stabilised. It was fantastic in terms of having intervened and carried out a respiratory physio, and made a difference. So yes, it was a bit apprehensive in terms of my marks, but in the grand scheme of things, I couldn't have cared less about my marks at that particular time, and my review was the last thing I was thinking about. And the rest of the day kind of followed suit with being really, really busy. So I really felt for my educator. The educators do an amazing job at balancing at their level, managing a team, clinically working, prioritising caseloads, supporting and mentoring band 5s and band 6s if they're a band 7, and then they get a student for 5 weeks or longer in other courses. And I think as a student it's really worth remembering how incredible our educators are at being able to give us the opportunity to learn and to spend that time with them. We hopefully add to the team at going forward, but at the end of the day we do add to their workload. And I think especially in certain settings, I think that's quite a pressure for educators. But I have to say that every placement I've had so far, my educators have been outstanding, for different reasons, and they've been very, very different, and I've had to work differently with them. But I couldn't fault them in any way. So anyway, yeah, so today I had my review. I'm really pleased. Marks on placement, marks should be irrelevant, but they're not. Obviously, we as physiotherapy students usually put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do well. I certainly do. Having done a previous degree, I'm quite mediocre, really, to be honest. I prioritised life, socialising, sports and things, as a lot do when you're 18. Now this means an awful lot more in terms of it's a massive career change. I'm putting an awful lot on hold, as is Jodie. So it's quite important to me that I make the most and I do as well as I could to prove to myself that I can academically achieve as well. So marks are important, but at the same time, the placement experience is far more important, and that was kind of proof today, really. The experience I got today, not having my review at the time we planned, far outweighed the fact that I hadn't had my review. But did really pleased with my marks. Definitely fair, good, really good feedback. Some, both positive and constructively. I feel like I've got some really solid things now to take away. Positively, my feedback was given to me that my educator would be happy if I was to turn up as a qualified band 5 tomorrow. They'd be really pleased to have someone like me on the team, which was that you can't get better sort of feedback than that, really, from my point of view. As I said right at the beginning of all these videos, my objectives for this placement were to do sort of several certainly specific things, but overall my overarching aim was to be band 5 ready. So to get that feedback suggests that I am, and I can't say I felt it, to be honest. Maybe the last couple of days I have a bit more, but the area that I was in was incredibly complex. Intensive care, respiratory physiotherapy is another world. It's worlds apart from anything else I've experienced in physiotherapy. The amount of information that you have to know outside of your scope of practice. I'm not saying you act upon that specifically, but the knowledge you have to have outside your area is far more than I think in any other area that I have so far experienced. It's far more medical. The MDT working is huge. The urgency, the acuteness of the care, the deteriorating patients, the equipment, the monitoring, all of it is really intense. I mean, intensive care is intense for not just for the patients, but also the staff working there. So it fitted really well with my sort of want to know lots. That hindered me sometimes in terms of skipping the basics, but I kind of brought myself back halfway through. But intensive care is intense, and it's been the most intense placement I've done so far. It's been the hardest placement I've done so far. But from feedback I've had from other students on their respiratory placement, I think I've had probably the best respiratory experience I could have possibly asked for within my degree. So for that, I'm really, really thankful and really appreciative. So everyone on the team was amazing. So I'm just over the moon, really. I'm absolutely over the moon. And I'm not one to talk about what grades and stuff like that I've got overly, to be honest. Just I did as I wanted to. So I'm happy with that. And the experience was far outweighed my expectations. And I now can go into next year, graduate, hopefully, all being well, go into my band 5, and I will not fear respiratory. I don't think I'll even fear on call, to be honest now. I'll respect it, but I've got a really good idea of what it's going to be like, and I can't come up against anything more than I have done on this placement in ICU, both paediatric as well. Some of the things I've seen there, I've seen one of the children we've had, so I won't go into any more, but yeah, I've experienced everything I think I could do. So I think I may do a separate video on some of the specifics of a respiratory placement and how I might put together something for anyone going on respiratory placement, specifically for an ICU, some things that I think that would be good for if I'd known beforehand, that sort of video. But for now, I'm so pleased to be home. I love my placement, but I'm looking forward to getting back into a bit of routine and normality back home, back with family, friends, and just sort of normalities of life. Back again out on placement in January for my musculoskeletal placement up in Exeter. So between now and then, we've got one module to cover, which is about sort of physical activity and sort of that scheme of things. I can't remember what exact it is. Enhancing physical activity. So we've got a poster and a presentation for that. So yeah, it's going to be quite different, but I'm looking forward to that. Going to really try to work hard. One thing this placement's taught me is in third year you've got to up your game massively. I've worked hard in my first and second year, and I think I've got to work even harder. So yeah, it's a big difference. The jump between second and third year is far greater than first to second year. So I've got to just keep plugging away. I've not got long to go. So without further ado, over and out.